welcome to Small Country Big Talk. We are joined today by Israeli basketball legend Tal Brody. Born in New Jersey, Trenton, studied at the University of Illinois, and after his experience at the Maccabi Games in Israel, decided to forgo an NBA career with the Baltimore Bullets and instead join Maccabi's Maccabi Tel Aviv, in the process creating, rejuvenating Israeli basketball. Welcome, Tal. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Joey. Glad to be here.
Most people know about your historic run with Maccabi Tel Aviv, bringing the country its first European Cup, your prolonged involvement with the association, and now as a Goodwill Ambassador. Can you tell us a little bit about what brings you to New York today?
Well, in New York, I came after a swing through Atlanta, where I brought about 30 caps of Maccabi Tel Aviv and shirts, and it was Atlanta Hawks were playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Consul General of Ofer Aviram. They had a nice idea, making a Jewish Community Day. And it was great because Omri Caspi, our first Israeli in the NBA, was playing with Cleveland, and Anthony Parker, who played 4 seasons with us in Israel, and we won 3 European basketball championships with him. And so it was a great day. Josh Smith, Joe Johnson, the president of the Atlanta Hawks, and Dominic Wilkins also on the floor receiving basketball shirts from Israel. They're very happy. It was a nice souvenir for them. And Atlanta Hawks at the end wound up winning the game in an overtime by 2 points. It was an exciting game. And I was glad to see that Omri Caspi getting minutes and playing on the floor.
So as a basketball player and a Goodwill Ambassador on behalf of the State of Israel is a truly inspiring one, demonstrates following one's heart. What can you tell our listeners who aren't familiar with the details of your story of how a Jewish kid from Trenton, New Jersey, who's NBA bound, ends up moving to Israel?
Well, I was very happy to receive an invitation to join the United States team to the Maccabean Games, and we're talking about the 7th Maccabea, when Mark Spitz, who won 7 medals in the Munich Olympics, were standing together at the ceremony before going into the stadium. And after I finished the rookie camp, today it's the Washington Wizards. At that time it was the Baltimore Bullets, and if it was maybe 12th or the 13th player, depends on Wikipedia or Google, in the draft where you have 30 teams today. At that time you only had 9 teams in the NBA. And I thought Baltimore was overloaded with guards, and of course financially the NBA at that period of time, it's not like the NBA today. The average salary in the NBA at that time was about $20, $30, maybe $40,000. And today the average salary, I believe it's about $4.8 to $5 million, around that type of figure. But when I went to Israel, even when I had the intentions of returning to the Bullets to continue, which they wanted in the training camp towards the league in September. After we won the gold medal, I was approached by Maccabi Tel Aviv and the Ministry of Sport, Education and Sport, about taking up a challenge, which basically Maccabi Tel Aviv at that time never got past the first round of the European Basketball Championships. And that appealed to me. And I decided that I'm going to go for 1 year and then go back to see what's happening with the Baltimore Bullets in the NBA, because Philadelphia needed guards a lot more than I thought that Baltimore needed guards. And what happened to me my first year in Israel was such a fantastic experience, not only in the basketball, but the social life, the cultural life, how I saw the family life, how I saw the meeting between friends in the cafes. Everything appealed to me. Plus you have 8 months of good weather. I remember from Trenton we would go to Atlantic City, all really inspired and everything, ready to go into the ocean. All of a sudden, after driving an hour and a half, it would start to rain. One thing about Israel, 8 months a year it's not raining, and you got great beach weather. And so I enjoyed everything around me outside of the basketball. Then when I decided to come back for another year, that year was even greater than the first year. And as I decided to make Aliyah to Israel, I was drafted into the United States Army, and I didn't think twice when I got my draft notice, and went back to did 2 years in the United States Army, and then went back to Israel. as a new immigrant, and 7 years later we won for the first time the European Basketball Championship.
So you mentioned just how different the NBA was when you were playing versus the way it is today. But still, for a lot of NBA fans, the idea of someone forgoing the opportunity to play there is somewhat unthinkable. I have to ask, do you ever ask yourself, or at any point did you ask yourself, what if? What if you had chosen to stick with the NBA, how things might have turned out? Or is it not even a question you entertain?
I'll tell you, for a long time it's not even a question. It's with the self-satisfaction, and from what I saw, what it meant for a Jewish basketball player from Trenton, New Jersey, making Aliyah to Israel, and what has been influenced, not only in basketball, but my contributing to the social life, let's say, to the in the charitable organizations. I saw the meaning was much greater than maybe just being another basketball player at the NBA at that time. And I saw when they really say you can make a difference, I saw the difference, what I was making in the life of Israel for many Israelis. Those happy moments during the days of boycotts, during the days of economic recessions, and through the various wars in Israel, never losing confidence in the Israeli army and feeling safe in Israel. And I saw what it meant. So by saying, giving up an NBA career, you're right. I mean, maybe if it was today with 30 teams in the NBA and the minimum salary of about $470,000, not $12,000 like it was at that time, or an average salary, as I said, close to $4 or $5 million, maybe it wouldn't have been the same decision. But I probably would have been disappointed if I didn't make that decision of going to Israel.
Your resume as a basketball player is quite impressive. Taking a team to the state championships, winning in high school, going 24-0, then being recruited to Illinois among 40 other schools, being drafted into the NBA. When you look back, that's not even to mention winning in 1977, the first championship for Israel in basketball. When you look back at your career, what are the few moments that really stick out to you as the most memorable?
Well, that season of 1977, I think it's memorable for every Israeli. Even the ones that weren't even born, they learn about it in school, and it's with me, it's with all of Israel every day almost. And the excitement of basketball, one of the hardest things in Israel is to get a ticket for a basketball game, even with 11,000 seat stadium. But looking back at that season of 77, on the way to the finals, we had to go up against one of the best teams in Europe, which was a Russian team. And up to that time, the Russians would never play us in a European championship. They would always drop out and never exchange flags with us. And in 77, because they had such a great team and they beat the United States team, the only time the United States lost at that time in the Olympics was to the Russian team in the previous Olympics. And this time they didn't want to drop out, but they said they don't want us to play them in Russia. They didn't agree to come to Tel Aviv to play us. They only play us in a small town called Virton in Belgium, which the EuroLeague let them choose where the neutral court's going to be. And all our fans, Jews from Israel, from Europe, found this little city, and the excitement that was in that small basketball court when the Sergei Belov, captain of the Russian team, and myself as captain of Maccabi Tel Aviv, were lining up before the games. I saw when we walked into the floor how their faces changed and were shocked when they saw so many Israeli flags, and that spirit of singing Chaveinu Shalom Aleichem Am Yisrael Chai, and our fans were right into it, and that picked us up with a great spirit. And for them it was like a shell shock, and we wound up winning the game 91-79. And all pandemonium broke out, not only in that stadium, where everybody just went onto the court dancing the hora, also all over Israel. And when we came back to Israel, Well, I might say even before the game, as all that pandemonium broke out on that floor, I was going to the dressing room when Alex Giladi, who was the TV announcer, put the microphone into my face, and when he asked me, Tal, how do you feel about this? And that's when I said that אנחנו על המפה, אנחנו נשארים על המפה, לא רק בספורט, אבל בחכל. We are on the map, we are staying on the map, not only in sport, but in everything. And since then, the Iron Curtain has fallen. East and West Berlin, the wall has fallen. You have the Arab Spring with all the Arabic governments are changing. Who knows what's going to be? And the place that stands strong in this world today is Israel.
You mentioned that having an exhibit at the James Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame for Maccabi Tel Aviv is a great honor for you. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what that was like, what the exhibit is about, and how it felt to see your jersey hanging up in the rafters next to the greats in the NBA?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, it's been a nice ride, and after, it was about 3 years ago, as celebrating the 60 years of Israel's anniversary, I was invited to represent Maccabi Tel Aviv at the James Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, where for the first time, a team outside of the United States is going to be honored and exhibited in the James Naismith Hall of Fame. And there are a few of our players' jerseys, my jersey, Mickey Berkovich, and we had one other player that his jersey was held on that wall. And when you look around, when you see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when you see Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and then the great teams of the Boston Celtics, it was a great honor for me, great honor for Maccabi Tel Aviv to be there and to be exhibited and be the first team to have that honor outside of any team in the United States.
One thing I'm curious about, you have the unique distinction in having represented two countries on the international stage, both Israel, with your time at Maccabi Tel Aviv, and then America while serving for the U.S. Army. Can you talk a little about how those experiences were different, what it was like representing each country?
Well, I'll tell you, it's like when people ask me, how did you feel as a soldier in the United States Army and how do you feel as a soldier in the Israeli Army? There's a big difference, because in the Israeli Army you know exactly what you're fighting for and you know that you can't lose. And in the American Army, when you're fighting wars, let's say like in Vietnam at that period of time, things were so far away, you really don't know how it is, and to go on all those titles for democracy, for freedom, and it's not really the same if you're an Israeli soldier and you know exactly why you're fighting for, you know your history, you know that culture, you know that religion, and you know it's Israel that depends on you as a soldier to fight for. Now, as a basketball player, as a citizen of the United States and a citizen of Israel, serving in the United States Army, serving in the Israeli Army, being on the national teams of both countries, the United States team, and playing in the World Championships with Billy Walton and a great group of guys for the U.S. in the World Championship in '70 in Yugoslavia, and playing with the Israeli national team, and it's like the 4th of July at the American Ambassador's house in Herzliya in Israel, and he says that, yeah, and you're still living.
You're really the founding father of basketball in Israel, and I know that you're still involved, you still have a role with Maccabi Tel Aviv. Clearly, though, basketball must have changed within Israel since your playing days. Can you talk about the way in which the game is different today in Israel, and the way in which the country receives it? Might have changed.
Many things have changed, but basically the biggest change is the conditions for basketball and conditions for all sports in Israel. As the popularity of sports has grown out of the success first of the basketball, then the other Olympic sports coming on since 20 years since we received our first medals. The government, the Ministry of Education and Sport has been giving prizes. They gave 1 million shekels in prizes to top athletes in individual sports and Olympic sports. and the conditions, the stadiums that have been built in athletics, and now our league is indoor basketball. But when I came to Israel originally, most of the games were outdoors. Sometimes you had to judge your shot with the rain, with the wind. If you went to a kibbutz and there was a dust storm, or remember we went up to Haifa one time and then we got rained out after the first half, and we had to come back to Tel Aviv. And our 5,000 seat open stadium at that time, because of our success and winning the European Basketball Championship. And in 1970, when I went back to Israel, a 5,000 seat stadium turned into a 10,000 seat stadium. And then a few years ago, I brought the plans from the NBA office back to Israel, because eventually, I believe in the next decade, the NBA will have a European division, and Israel will be one of the countries included. And for that, I brought the plans back to what they will have to do with the stadium, and we increased it a little bit to 11,000 seat stadium with the ideas that were presented in the plans of the NBA architecture of building arena.
What would your key message to all of these aspiring Jewish athletes be today?
Well, first of all, you have an opportunity out there. I mean, definitely you have the conditions in the United States and the beautiful gymnasiums of every Jewish community center that I have seen. And I think that when you have a goal, and even if not your main goal is to participate in professional sports, but if you can take your profession, if you have another profession first, and you want to be an athlete second. If you want to be an athlete first, that's even greater for Israel. You could probably make maybe the national team or a very good club team. But if not, you take that experience that you have of being a good athlete in your area and using it as a way to get to the Maccabean Games. And from the Maccabean Games, maybe the fact that even though you're not thinking of being a professional athlete, but all that experiences that you're built, you can go to Israel and help in the variety of sports that are popular, which are similar to basically what you're probably playing.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you having here.
Thank you very much.